This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Gaby, how you doing, my friend?
Good. I'm probably about 10 blocks from you guys right now here in West Kendall. So maybe I should have just slid through the restaurant. I don't know. Like, I feel like that's something that just kind of slipped my mind until you mentioned that just now.
Yeah, bro, you should have come on over. Would have fed you and everything.
Right
man.
there. I'm literally right there. Like, I'm at my mother-in-law's house in West Kendall. Like, I'm on like 157th Avenue and Killian. So I'm like literally right there.
What disappointment, bro? You should have come out.
It was. Yeah, no. I think maybe next road game I'll pop in and maybe I can sit down with you guys.
What do we have?
For a little bit.
Just Pittsburgh, right? Left? Is that road?
Oh,
right?
We got Clemson next week. Clemson's on the road. On the road next weekend. So maybe next Saturday I gotta swing by and hang out with you guys.
That's right. So come on by for the Clemson game. Do we know what time the Clemson game is already?
I think it's on hold.
Be early, man.
Oh,
like,
please, please make it a 12:30 game. Please, 12:30. Please, 12:30.
I'll tell you right now.
All right. So, Jaden Rashada, fill us in. Now, initially, this guy was a Florida kid and then switched to Miami and now went back to Florida. And when I heard this is what I thought. You were sexy enough to get him to flip, but unfortunately, you got old and you got out of shape. And he said, "You're not sexy there anymore. I'm going back to Florida." That's kind of what I felt like when I saw him flip-flop back and forth like that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. So, yeah, I mean, he was never, like, publicly committed to Florida, but the thought was that's where he was going to go. Miami really, in, like, a week there over the summer months, kind of made everything happen really, really quickly, got him on board. Miami did have some momentum earlier on in the spring, but it was a really, really weird recruitment and came down to the end. I mean, I think anyone that kind of understands the current landscape of college football and recruiting probably knows what played a factor into that. But ultimately, Miami gets him on board. Florida flips him. I mean, really, he's going to end up being a Gator. It is what it is. And, it sounds like Miami's going to roll with Emory Williams, and that's the quarterback that they're going to kind of go into the future with, I guess. And, I think there's still a lot of options on the table in terms of what the future of the position looks like. I do expect Tyler Van Dyke to be back in 2023. What does that look like for Jake Garcia? Not sure. I do think Jakari Brown is definitely a part of the future plans. But, I think that what happens at quarterback at Miami, a situation that seemed so good, so, like, promising, like, a few months ago, doesn't seem, or maybe just has a bit more question marks than maybe we thought. So definitely interested to see how the quarterback situation in general plays out at Miami over the next few months.
What's up, Pops? Hope dad life is treating you well.
Yeah, hey, man, all good.
So a couple things. Number one, Emory Williams' Elite 11 performance at that camp was, if I'm not mistaken, he finished ranked ahead of Jaden Rashada. Take what you may from that. All right, it's just a camp, skeleton drills, stuff like that. But he did finish that camp ranked higher than Jaden did. So, I mean, with knowing that, okay, is it wrong for Miami fans to say, yes, you don't lose a player of that caliber and it not matter? But is there but we have Emory Williams attached to that as well to kind of soften the blow because he's no scrub?
Yeah, I think if you're asking people in Coral Gables, I think that they would say, you know what? We felt good about Emory Williams when we took him. I think when they took him, honestly, the thought process, the plan was to just take Emory. He had a lot of people. I mean, I've been kind of hammering this over the past few days. A lot of people in the building are pro Emory Williams. They think he has a bright future. They're excited about his developmental upside. Again, not a guy that's going to walk into a starting position or to compete, but they think, 2-3 years down the line when his turn kind of comes up, they feel like he's someone that could potentially lead the program. Maybe, big picture wise, I think, I don't think Miami was just kind of kicking themselves over this. Honestly, I think internally the thought process is really, if this is the only thing that happens, we can live with that. I think the main concern from Miami was the potential domino effect. Like, does Jaden Rashada leaving to Florida cause X, Y, and Z to happen? And if it doesn't, then you know what? I think that's what you have to live with in this crazy world of recruiting. That's really going to be, December is going to be silly season, man. I mean, dudes are going to be flipping left and right. We saw an absurd number of summer commitments. That's going to lead to just an epic number of flips here down the stretch before that early signing period. in really late December. I mean, December 21st is the early signing period, week before Christmas. I mean, that's a long time. There's still a lot of time in recruiting time between now and then. So, I do think that Emory Williams is the guy. I think that they're really happy with what they have in him. Does Jaden Rashada sting? Optically, definitely. Big picture-wise down the road, I think that's still to be determined. We see some of these high-profile quarterbacks obviously hit a lot of the time, but we also see some flame out. I think it's always kind of a toss-up with these guys, especially in this transfer portal era, where I think at one point, I think it was 60% of blue chip quarterbacks had ended up transferring from their initial destination. So I think it's just kind of wait and see mode. The long-term impact of this flip for Miami.
Follow up, which has two parts. Number one, if Miami maintained, their early season, I don't want to say success, but it hasn't been the late season collapse. Let's say Miami at this point has 6 wins in the season and they don't look anemic the past few weeks. Okay. Does Jaden stay, or was he always destined to kind of flip back to Florida? Number one. Number two, what are you expecting the portal from Miami quarterback wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first question is a very fair question. Again, I think Miami could have potentially looked good, and this could have still happened. I think the on-field performance was probably, an assisting factor in all of this. But really, I mean, Jaden Rashada is a NorCal kid. I mean, I think it was very hard for Miami to have a firm grip on that. I feel like a core of the class is kind of local, especially with these IMG guys. They're able to get them down on campus all the time. I mean, you hear Mario Cristobal talk about it. We want to get these guys, bring them around the program, allow them to experience these things in person while they're around, where we can kind of manage, all that type of stuff. So maybe this happens anyways. And again, kind of going back to the state of his original recruitment, I mean, it seemed like it was going to be Florida. Miami came in very, very last minute to kind of win this thing over. What were the factors that even led to him eventually picking Miami over, when Florida was kind of trending there? It never really, again, in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, it never really felt like this was a commitment because, you kind of cut him open, bleed orange and green, all those cliches that, we love to toss around. It felt like this was a situational commitment where, it kind of, things were kind of lining up in a pretty way that seemed attractive. And, again, it never really felt like a heart decision, like a family decision, like some guys talk about things that way. So maybe this is one of those things that was kind of unavoidable. In terms of the transfer options, that's very interesting. Again, it might be me speculating. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both with, intel that I've been able to get. I mean, Jake Garcia is going to be going into year 3. Again, I expect, based on everything I'm gathering, Tyler Van Dyke is coming back in 2023. If year 3, Jake Garcia, if you're a quarterback, you want to be leading your own program, right? You can't keep waiting around. So I think in the mind of Jake Garcia, if you're not going to be the guy in 2023 for Miami, you need to go find a program of your own to lead. So, I mean, I don't know if he sticks around for this personally. If he leaves, I think Miami could potentially supplement this situation, considering Tyler Van Dyke's shoulder injury. Who knows how that lingers? Who knows how that recovers? I think you need to have an arm behind him that's not Jakari Brown. He should not be playing right now. This is a developmental kid who's thinking long term in his development, all those types of things. He's not ready to play right now. He's going to start on Saturday for Miami. He's not prepared for this as a quarterback. There's a long way to go. So I think if you want to go find an arm who might be okay with potentially waiting a year or so to kind of come in and be the guy and just start getting used to this Miami system, I mean, I think it might be worth exploring the options, again, just of what arms become available. It'll be interesting to see how that eventually plays out, because as we know, I'm sure plenty will become available, and it'll just be dependent on who's willing to come in and maybe sit one more year at Miami, with the potential to obviously get a chance to get on the field should things fall that way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about, recruiting another quarterback, because I would imagine Jake sees the writing on the wall and he's going to have to go because he's not really going to have another opportunity. Anyways, I'm sorry, Gaby, I don't see it in the kid. The way he reads defenses, or he can't, it's really disturbing. Actually, I'm actually intrigued with Jakari because Gaddis is a running guy at heart. And if you remember, Cristobal did more running with Herbert than he did passing practically. So maybe this Jakari thing might be something that they could develop down the line. I feel bad for him because he's so young and so green. But today, all right, I don't feel good about this game today. I got to tell you, Gaby, I wouldn't even pick the Canes in this game. I'd easily pick Georgia Tech. You saw Jaden fall. Will other dominoes fall? Because everybody was talking about how the class was strong, 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 and now there's been, a crack. Will that crack get bigger if there's another disappointing performance today? What are you hearing amongst them? Because they were saying all the right things, and then all of a sudden we saw Jaden do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last 24 hours, really, Miami has had to do some damage control. I mean, Tommy Kinsler is an offensive lineman who was telling Florida reporters that he was going to be in the swamp today for when Florida hosts South Carolina. You saw Francis Mauigoa kind of come out and tweet something like, I will not be in Florida this weekend. I'm all Kane. What that tells me is he was planning to be at Florida, but Miami kind of got out in front of that, kind of nipped it in the bud, right? So I do think that, again, these are the early signs of things, of guys maybe exploring their options. Maybe it's harmless and maybe just kind of want to go see a good game, but nonetheless, these are guys taking trips to other campuses. And again, in recruiting, all this stuff matters. I mean, again, all these verbal commitments are non-binding. No matter how many tweets you send out, no matter what you say to the media. I mean, you are not like there's nothing that says you have to be at Miami. So this is a wire-to-wire thing. Until pen meets paper, Miami needs to be recruiting these kids like they're not committed, and they're going to fight. They're going to have to claw and fight all the way until that December 21st. I mean, we're talking, over 5 weeks away. That's a long time when it comes to recruiting, and especially in those December months when the in-home visits, official visits start picking back up, and it really gets down to the nitty-gritty. So, yeah, I mean, I've been telling our board, hang on tight here. I mean, this is going to be a wild, wild run here to, the race to early signing period. And, yeah, I think Miami could potentially flip some other guys, but there are going to be plenty of programs trying to flip some guys committed to Miami. So we're already starting to see some examples of things kind of, again, you talk about those little cracks. Maybe there are a few. I think Miami's trying to cement those up and seal those really quickly. But I think we'll know here in the next few weeks how committed these guys truly are, because I don't force – you talked about this game. I don't see it going well on Saturday. I don't see it going well at Clemson next weekend, and I don't see it going well at home against Pitt to close the year. It's tough sledding. It's an uphill battle, and it's going to be a grind.
You mean those 2 interceptions for touchdowns on the first 2 plays against Virginia today against Pittsburgh didn't instill all that confidence in the world? Wow. Yeah, no, that's and we've been talking about this throughout the week on the platform, but I was talking about it today on the pregame show. Sadly for Mario, he ruined any honeymoon, and because unfortunately, as much as I believe in Mario and I'm willing to give him a chance and all that good stuff, the one thing we all have to be honest is they get a terrible grade this year on how they handled this team and how they handled, especially for me, Josh Gaddis, I think did a terrible job on adjusting to the talent he inherited instead of almost square pegging in a round hole his offense to these people. And I think that hurt Tyler Van Dyke early on because you weren't playing to the quarterback's strengths until you started to spread things out a little bit more the way he likes it. And so there are a lot of things that are questionable on the coaching side, and I think I'm expecting a really ugly end. I feel bad for Mario because that staff is going to have a strong start next year, or they're going to have a lot of people on the negative side early on next year.
Yeah, they definitely need to figure this stuff out. And yeah, there's a lot of different things that I feel like people can point to. I don't know if this roster. I don't think there's particularly anything wrong with Josh Gaddis's offense. I think that Miami's not necessarily built personnel wise to run exactly what it is that he wants to do. I think it's become over. That's right. You got to adjust. Yeah, and I do think that. Again, I'm not reporting this, but I wouldn't be super surprised if there are changes, even amongst the coaching staff. I expect a mass exodus of transfers. I just think I don't know how great of a job they did initially evaluating this roster in terms of them being able to kind of play this bully ball, kind of like maulers up front. Doesn't feel like they have the personnel to kind of, eat up blocks and shut off defenders, all those different types of things that they kind of want to do. And again, I think they've had to oversimplify a lot of things because they don't necessarily have the most electric playmakers on the outside. So, yeah, I think a lot of things are going to have to change. I think they have a better understanding of this roster and who this team is moving forward. And I do think that what they do in the transfer portal is going to be to kind of build something that they can run and kind of play to the strengths of whatever it is that they want to build. I expect a completely different offseason approach, going into 2023. I think Mario Cristobal understands that, however it was evaluated in this initial year, it's got to just be different. So I expect a lot of different things to change, whether that be staff, whether that be personnel, whether that be just be the overall approach of how they're going to run their offense. And maybe, some better talents and transfer portal additions, all these different guys will help move things along. But again, I think this program still has a long ways to go, and hopefully they can get it going sooner rather than later with, the availability of the transfer portal and how that could potentially help flip the roster over quicker.
Gaby, really quick, just, paying attention to, recruits, parents, what you're hearing around, reading tea leaves and stuff like that. What is keeping these guys, the ones that have stuck around, together? Because two things that recruits want to do coming out of high school, they want to go to a program that A, they can play at, and B, they can win at, that can help them get to the next level.
Excel, yeah.
So obviously Mario is selling them the future, okay? And parents love it, because you've seen parents tweet about it, of these recruits. They've, oh my God, coach this, coach that. We love the relationship. So obviously he's selling them their future. They're buying it. And if they're sticking around for the most part, literally one decommitment when several years ago may have been 5 at this point. The fact of playing is highly attractive, and they must believe in themselves of being able to win, because those are the guys going to be highly dependent on in terms of getting snaps. We know Cormani is a day one starter. We know Francis and possibly Sampson, if and when he pops, is a day one starter. Am I right or wrong? Correct me here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a part of all of this has just been the transparency from their end. I think maybe externally they haven't been, as doubtful about how this season was going to go as maybe they have been internally and to recruits. I don't think they were selling recruits on, 2022 is going to be this big glamorous, year where they're going to run the table or accomplish all these things. I think dating back to the summer months, I think the message to recruits, again, whether we knew that, as fans, as media members, as people on the outside of the shell of the program, we're aware of that. We had our own set of expectations. I think within themselves, there was a completely different understanding and expectation. And that's what they were relaying to the recruits. So when the recruits see this, it's not pretty, it's not fun. But again, I don't think that it's necessarily catching anybody by surprise, because I think they've had these conversations. I think the parents, I think these kids understand that this was going to be a rebuild in year one. And again, I think it took Mario Cristobal 7 or 8 weeks to say that word out loud, publicly. But again, I think within those 4 walls, inside that Carol Sofer indoor practice facility and inside the HEC, I think that that's a word that they've been tossing around since very, very early on, once Mario Cristobal walked through those doors. And again, I think what they've been selling has been the future, and it sounds pretty now. But again, when you've been hearing that even before all this got going, I think it's easy to buy in. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the kids that bought in the summer months. This was what they expected. Again, maybe not to this extreme. Maybe it's been worse maybe than everyone kind of thought, between injuries and how it's just hasn't really gelled and come together. But again, I don't think that this was something that's catching everyone by surprise. Like, oh, wait, but I thought you guys said that we were going to win 9 games. I thought you guys said you're going to win the Coastal, play for an ACC championship game. No, we didn't say that. Maybe others, the outside, is saying that, but I don't think internally that's what was being said at all. And I think that's a big reason why all of this has been able to kind of stay kind of, tight knit outside of this Jaden Rashada situation, which I think is an outlier amongst the rest of the core guys.
Yeah, they've never said anything like that. That's always been media or something. Mario just says they've got to work and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And by the way, I also feel bad for Mario because the cliches are going to get old really quick. And they're already getting old. And the sad part is that if you don't get the results, the cliches end up standing out. So I really feel bad for him, because there's every press conference, bro, it's just one cliche after another. And
I don't think he likes doing the press conference things. I don't think it's his favorite time of the week. I think he'd rather just do what he's going to do. And so he just says the things that he says, and that's it. that's
he gives you coach speak. Yeah, he gives you the robot coach speak. All right, what do you feel about today, man? Because Gaby, I don't feel good, bro. I feel like they're going to end up losing this game, man. It's hard to ask Jakari, to carry this team when that's kind of what they need. They don't have an offensive line that can maul people up front. They don't have a running game that can dominate. They don't have dominating receivers that all you have to do is just facilitate. No, the guy that's pulling the trigger in this offense has to be a difference maker because everything around him is so unstable. So that's really hard to ask Jakari to do a lot in this game. So your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I do not think Miami's going to win this game. I think the over-under is like 43.5 or something like that. I mean, you
44.
guys might have better act 44. I mean, I'm smashing that under. I mean, I don't think that this is going to be a high-scoring game at all. I think Georgia Tech and Virginia had like a 16-9 game earlier this year. Obviously, Miami and Virginia had that 14-12 for overtime game. I mean, I could see this being another just really grueling game to watch, a game I'm not going to want to watch over again. Still haven't watched back that Miami-Virginia game. Won't do it ever in my life. I could see this being like I think I predicted like 17-10 Miami losing this game. I mean, I could just see it just being an offensive, just really sluggish offensively. I mean, you'd think you'd call that a defensive, matchup or a defensive bout. I think it's just going to be two sluggish offenses, that are just kind of playing for 4 quarters. One's going to have to come out on top. I think it's going to be Georgia Tech. They're playing pretty motivated under Brent Key.
There you go. Gaby Urrutia, by the way, from 247 Sports or 24/7 Sports. Gaby, what are you working on so folks can check you out and follow you on Twitter, my man?
Yeah, we're always working on a lot. Again, a lot of recruiting stuff here, talent acquisition stuff. So transfer portal, departures, high school recruiting here down the stretch. I'll have many sleepless nights here before the early signing period, working really hard to have everyone up to date on what's going on around the program from that standpoint. So, definitely check us out over at InsideU.com. Through the Smoke podcast is my personal one that we do with the network. So, that's a great way to stay plugged in.
There you go. He's not sleeping because he's on the beat and he's a new dad.
And I had a baby, yeah. So I'm not sleeping very much these days.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter at Gaby Urrutia 247. Gaby, as always, appreciate you. We'll catch you on Tuesday night on the Miami Hurricanes Watch. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. There you go. Gaby Urrutia, baby, from 247 Sports. Appreciate him immensely.